I don't know others. Yeah. So let's do one thing. Let me share my screen and I'll tell you basically what we're gonna talk today. Basically, moreover towards the last session itself, we will first of all cover, and then we can basically continue to the next part. Okay. So, yeah, so our last session basically we were talking about the database activities part, and there I have explained to you guys like how you guys can basically how first of all we do a database automation, and what are the exact basically properties or dependencies we required, and then we have saw the as an example purpose we have utilized Excel as a database, and we basically see that how we can basically read the data from the Excel, right, as a database. So currently, I basically tried to install the community version of MySQL. Somehow the dependency or something, the DLL is not working. So let's not go with that. It's the same approach. I'm just showing to you guys like what are the basically ways to write the query to the database. So as we know that in a database, we do have a data definition language type of query where basically we do the create, truncate, or basically some data definition type, like if you want to create some definition in the database, we will go with those DML or DDL queries, right? But there are some DML queries as well, like insert, update, delete. If you wanted to perform that we can do. And they have their own syntax, they have their own query to like to write the query to the database. They have their own structured query language, right? So currently, if I show you the example, we were using, I have utilized this Excel file called, UI demo transaction.excel. We are using this as a database. And over here, you can see that we do have a cache in honest check and not honest check column. What I am going to show you, we have seen so far yesterday, basically, we have seen like how we can read out the data from the database that we have already see, like using the run query command. We have basically utilized that run query command where we have passed the select asterisk from and the table name, and it has provided us the entire data from the data table. But I'm showing to you back again. Then second part, I'm going to show you right now how we can insert a single record to the database. So there is basically activity already being provided by UiPath, bulk inserter, insert activity, which help you to insert the data directly to the basically database using by providing the data table. So you can utilize these activity, but to enter the single record, how you will do that? So to enter the single record, you have basically a insert query. You need to basically do that. To do that insert query, you need to provide like insert into your table name. Okay, over here, the table name is nothing but the transaction data dollar, which we have provided over here. Our seat name is become as a table name. Then basically you need to provide the columns in a table. All the columns you need to provide in a brackets, like cash in, honest check, and not honest check, basically in a comma separated way. And in the values section, you need to provide the values. So this is the way of basically to provide a single record or write a single record to the database. Okay. So this way, basically, we will write the data to the back to the database. The second part which we are doing right now over here, the second query which I have written, again the similar query, but the thing over here we are doing update query. So means we wanted to update some record to the database, right? Again, UiPath has provided us a mechanism to update a single record as well as a bulk update, right? If you wanted to perform a bulk update, we need to again utilize the bulk update activity that is basically over here, and it will require just a data table over here. No query you need to provide. You just need to provide the which table you wanted to update, and you just need to provide your basically the table which you're going to update. Basically, let's suppose I have a table called transaction data right now, and I wanted to update these two rows. I'll basically create a new data table with these three rows, and give a new values there, and can basically provide that data table over here as a runtime. It will update those rows in the DB. Okay, so that is a bulk update. But if you wanted to perform a single record, how we'll do that? We'll having a query update, again table name, set basically what column we wanted to set. We wanted to set this honest check as 180 and not honest check as 280. On the basis of what? We are saying that in the where clause, basically this where is nothing but it's helping us to do some filtration kind of thing. Okay, so over here we are doing saying that where cash in equal to 2. So in the code, if you go over here, you do have a cache in as 2, and we would like to update this value. Let's give a different value here so that we can say that it's updating or not. Let me give you over here 182 and over here 289. Okay, because currently 280 and 180 is already being present there. So let's not focus on that side. Yeah, let me just basically, and after that, what I'm doing, I'm just basically disposing the connection. This is very much important. So the thing is that if you won't dispose, okay, the thing is that if you won't dispose the connection, and if you have insert something or update something, it won't affect exactly at a runtime. It will do the query, but you, after basically opening the file again, you will find that the data is not being correctly updated, or it's not being inserted properly. Means it's not being inserted to the file. So the dispose is required because the connection is still open, and basically you wanted to, you are entering the data over there. And if the connection is still open, and you haven't closed the basically, database connection. So when you basically complete your task, when you go back to the Excel file, you will find that it hasn't inserted the data to the database. All right. So that is the basically a main question there. So to basically not get that situation, that make sure that if you are using a connect to database activity, always dispose the connection. All right. Always try to dispose it so that your changes get reflected to the database. Got it so far?
Yes, understood.
Okay. So let me just disclose this part. Let me just run this and show you the example now. So yeah, currently you can see we do have a 12 record. It has basically first we have read the data from the database. So currently it has shown us that there are 12 record being present in the database table transaction data. And if we continue on this part, like we wanted to insert a new record, so it has inserted a new record. And there is one more thing is that you can basically the one you are finding over here is nothing but that whenever you are going to do a run command, it won't return you a data table. It will return you a number of rows it has affected as a count. So currently I have basically, written this in this message box. I have written the value of this output value of this run command, basically where we are doing an insert activity. And it has tell us that it basically updated one record there. But update part is also done. And after the update, we have disposed the connection as well. So let's continue on that. And if we basically go to our file now, yeah. So if we go to our file and open it again, you will find that now the second record, because we have updated that 182, 289, it will become over here. And we have insert again a 10 basically over here. This is the row being added back again over here. If you go to the code, you will see that we have insert this only 10, 200, 10, 100, 200. This is the value gets updated over here. Got it?
Yes, got it.
Any question?
Yes.
So over here, see, first thing we have seen using the start, basically, using the connect to database activity. The same way you can do via the start transaction way as well. So let me show you that example as well, start transaction. So if we basically search in the activity over here, there is another way over here to connect to the database called start transaction. In the start transaction, as I told you last time, that whenever basically we are using it, it's kind of a same approach to connect to the database to perform our action. But the thing is that only the difference over here in the connect to database, we need to perform our action by our own. Like we need to basically dispose the connection. We need to basically, every time in each and every activity, whatever basically, let's suppose we are going to run a command or run a query, we need to again basically either we need to provide a existing connection or we need to basically recreate the connection back again. So that won't basically make sense. So UiPath has provided another activity called start transaction. Means that we would like to basically connect first of all with the database, and inside the do block, we will do whatever we wanted to perform action in a DB. Let's suppose we wanted to perform you can say, read the data, we wanted to write something, we wanted to update something, those kind of functionality, we will put it inside the do. And after basically every execution is being completed, it will dispose the connection by itself. We don't need to dispose it back again. Okay. So that is the basically a thing we have already talked on that, but I'll show you the example basically how it works. So if I show you this, let me just go over here, use the existing connection, Excel file, click on OK, choose your file, test the connection. Yeah, just a second. Test the connection, everything looks good. Now the thing is that if I open this in a advanced editor, so you can see that currently it basically targeting over here the file path. You can see it's kind of a user dependent path. And tomorrow, if this file is going to be run in some different location and someone else machine, it will break over there. Definitely it will break, because if I will give you this, you can say, this code, if I will give you in your system, if you will run it, it will
It will
fail.
not work. It will
Yeah,
not
it will
work.
not work because it's user dependent, right? So what way we can basically make it more less dependent with the user system? What we can do, we can basically remove this part, and instead of this, we can provide over here a variable name directly, right? And how we can concatenate a variable as a dynamic time? You just need to, first of all, let's create a variable over here. Maybe we can say str file, Excel file, okay? Excel file path, right? I'll create this, but we cannot provide like this because it won't understand this, because this is coming as a string form. So what we need to do, we need to provide this in a variable form. How we can do that? You just need to put a single double quotes over here, then put a plus icon, then provide your variable over here, str Excel file path, then again put a concatenation of plus icon, and then again surround it with the double quote, so that it will become now as a variable over here. Did you see the change? So it now basically using that as a variable, not as a string form, right?
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. And again, one more thing over here, you see that default directory is also basically a not a good basically over here. You can see that it's utilizing my user account, my directory basically over here, Gopal, OneDrive, document, UiPath database example. It's not correct, right? So we need to basically change that as well. So let's do one thing. Let me just save it and we'll commit again this part. Just a second. I'll update my variable first, so that I won't lose my value. Yeah. And here again, if we basically see the default directory, we need to change it also, because this is again a user dependent. So let's remove this part here as well, this default directory, right? And again, create a variable over here. Default dir, right? And this default dir again basically won't go as a string form. It should go on a variable format, right? So let's again basically provide over here default directory like this, right? Now we are good. We have the variable. We have basically a str Excel file path is also in a dynamic way, and the directory also. So connection string is already being built. So what it does, whenever basically we build the connection from the wizard, and finally it will provide us a connection string. So this is nothing but we call it as a connection string. Okay. And this connection string, you can store it somewhere in the orchestrator asset level as well, so that you can reutilize this further. Basically, let's suppose, tomorrow your requirement, the DBQ, basically the DSN is get changed, or something gets changed there, like Excel files, instead of the DSN is Excel file, something different you have created in the production environment. You can change it directly in the orchestrator asset. That will provide you more functionality and more better way to basically update the data, right? Rather than basically having hard coded this value in the code, so that you can do that. Now we are basically good with the connection already being built, and we have tested that it has built or not. Let's create a connection variable over here, right? So this is our connection. It will give us the connection back to us, right? Now, if I basically would like to run a query, let's suppose I would like to run a query, similar query I would like to run over here. I would say select a stick from, and keep in mind that whenever you are dealing with the Excel, you need to provide your sheet name in the square brackets. And at the end, you need to provide a dollar icon over there. Okay, so that it will treat it as a table basic. Transaction data, then I'll put dollar over here and put a square bracket so that it will provide me the data back again. But now again, it giving me some error over here. At least one of the connection must be used, means that even I have provided in the start connection, I need to provide the connection variable, my connection variable, which I have just created. So I just provide it over here, the connection variable. Now everything looks good. We can hold the data in a DT. Let's say DT records. Okay. Now if we put a message box over here, not a message box, maybe let's suppose a log message saying at number of rows, all right? So we are basically good with that. Now you can see that we are not going to dispose anything. Over here, it will close the connection by itself. We don't need to dispose it. All right, let's do one thing. Let's see that let's verify that whether it is working or not. Okay, let's copy this update query over here again. And I'm placing it here. And instead of this DB connection, I'll give my connection basically, which we have just built, right? And let's change the value. Maybe this time we would like to do not in the second, maybe third cache in row, right? So let's see that whether it will work or not. So currently it has given me error. Optional feature not implemented. The system data ODBC data exception. So somewhere it get failed, means that Excel driver. Let's see where it is getting failed. Just a second now. I'll debug it. Let's see it together. Yeah, it's failing here itself. Let me just do one thing. Go to my connection wizard. Do the changes over here. Not OLEDB, ODBC. Use build connection. Maybe Excel files. Okay. And this one is fine. Test the connection. Everything looks good. Click on OK. Let's see now. Optional feature not implemented. Something is there. I think just a second. Let's see that what's optional feature saying. Provider, we have provided start transaction. Microsoft ODBC Excel driver optional feature not implemented. Just a second. Yeah, now it get done. But the thing is that over here, something the update query is not working. Let me just basically, change it again. Must be updatable query. Operation must use an updatable query. Yeah, we have used the update table query only, no? Correct. We have utilized the update table query only. This has read properly, but something wrong with the use transaction one. Okay, means it's saying that only one command can be used if we are going with the not with the start transition property. But if we enable this start transition property, it's get failing at a runtime at the set transaction label itself because something wrong with this data provider basically. So that's the case over here. It's not related to us. It's basically some database build like how it has built basically, right? So let me see once again to rebuild the connection. Yeah, everything is fine. It has connected as well. Advanced section is basically uh maximum buffer size is this. Driver ID it has provided. DSN is this. Page timeout is this. It's fine only. It should work, but still, yeah. Some optional feature not implemented. Something from the UiPath side, basically in the start transaction, at basically when we are using an Excel database, something is missing there from their end. Because of that dependency, it get failing. Anyway, we will not go with this way. Basically, you will rarely use this as a Excel as a database. But the thing is that how you gonna utilize it, that is the way basically we wanted to show you, right? So this is only the way basically we will perform in the other database provider as well, like Oracle if you want to perform, or maybe a SQL or any no SQL databases. Those basically the same operation we do there as well. All right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's not go with that one as of now. Basically, we can continue our next part. So far, do you have any question before starting the new topic for today's session? I just would like to basically brief on this so that I have basically started on that first. And now I'm going to, start a new topic, which is called UiPath API automation.
Yeah, understood up to here.
Okay. All right then. Just a second. I'll connect with my uh, mouse pad and then we can start. Just a second. I'm stop sharing and share it back. Okay. So let me share it back my screen. Do let me know you are able to see my screen.
Yes, the PPT, I'm able to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna talk about today the API automation. Very first, like this is a new topic, guys. We're going to start today. So it's basically, you can say what is the name of this API site, why we need it, and all those things we will cover over here. The agenda is that we'll talk about the introduction part, first of all, the API side, then we'll talk about the HTTP methods and overview, API integration in UiPath, how basically we do that, the authentication techniques we do have. We'll see a demo use case as well, and then finally some best practices. I'll talk on that as well. So let's suppose basically I'll start talking about the very first the uh, just a second. I'll set my pencil basically. Okay. I hope it should work. Yeah. Okay. Now, I'll, yeah. So we are good. We are going to talk about API in UiPath. It's not only in UiPath. Basically, this API part you will find in every programming language. And it's a basically, before understanding that, I'll tell you that somehow on a daily basis, you guys are using that. Like you are using maybe Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, like those are behind the scene using this API terminology only. Okay. So let me just give you like what is this API? API is nothing but it's a application programming interface. This is stands, the API is stands for application programming interface. Okay. And whenever we say this API, it's a very important part for any of the application which is basically interacting with the user on a daily basis. Okay. So if I come over here and I'll I'll say like this. Think about this way. You having your local system. Here it is your system basically which you are using on a daily basis, right? It's your local system. And here basically think about that in your local system you have run Instagram maybe. Okay, just a second. Yeah, Instagram you are running in your local system. And here let's suppose the server, the Instagram server is running over here. Okay, this is a server of Instagram. Hope you knows what is server I mean to say over here, right? Means that somewhere at basically at the cloud storage or some location basically they are storing your data. Okay, whatever data you have basically they have stored it in a server basically, and that server is located in some location. This is located in some location basically. Okay, and it has your all the data being stored. You can think about like your basically computer having a CPU and the hard disk and all those things. The server is nothing but the same only, which having a computational process as well as the memory consumption basically feature, right? So the thing is that whenever basically we are running a local system in from the local system, if we are running something, let's suppose we are running a Instagram. So from the local system, the request basically going to our server. Okay, this is the request basically. It will go to the server, right? It will go to the server, and once server find that okay, this user whatever basically is trying to access the data, it's a authenticated user and it's a valid user, it will provide it response back to the local user, right? It provide the response. This is basically you do on a daily basis. Whenever you serve something in a internet and all those things, you will basically get the data in this way only. Like you basically send a request to the particular server, maybe Google server, maybe the particular provider, whichever basically you are using. Let's suppose Gmail is a, if you are using, you are going with the Google account basically, and then it trying to interact with the Google server at the behind the scene, right? The same way over here, the Instagram, if you are trying to basically access, it will somewhere down the line interacting with the Instagram some server, which is basically located into some location, right? And it will basically whenever we are trying to hit the enter, it will send the request to the server, and server validate the things and return back the response in a to back to the local system, right? This is basically a architecture which we know, but what is going on over here which we not aware about. Let me do one thing. Let me place a new slide over here so that we can basically easily work on that. Let me just place a new slide. Yeah. So I have this architecture basically, which I just explained to you, right? We having basically over here, as we say, yeah, we already know that we having this architecture basically where we have this local system, right? And in the local system, we are running some application, right? Whatever application basically we are running in this local system, there is some server being present over here, which is located in some application, right? This is our server, and it is located to some location basically, which we don't know, like where it is located. And from our local system, like currently, if you see the example from the Zoom, basically also, we are trying to interact each of us, right? And how basically we are connected with the server. That is basically via the API itself. So over here, whenever we wanted to bridge this gap, this this gap basically, whenever we wanted to bridge, like to basically from the local to the server, if you wanted to bridge this gap, how this will be bridge the gap? It will bridge by the API only. So API, what it does, it will provide the mechanism to talk basically your one system to the other, like as a software talk, basically you can say. We are not doing basically interaction to the UI. Behind the scene, behind the basically you can say in the background, two application are talking each other and providing a, you can say, data transfer to each other. So API are mainly used for data transfer process. Okay, and what it does, it will basically transfer the data from one system to another, right? So that is basically a API. And how it does work. So basically, whenever we are sending a request to the server, right? Over here, let's suppose you have run google.com, right? You have run google.com in your browser. What it does basically, it will send a request to the server in a form of HTTP request. Now, what is this HTTP request? So this HTTP request is nothing but it's a hyper text transfer protocol. So whenever we would like to interact with the, from one server, one system to another, we will send the request in a form of HTTP request. It's basically a more advanced and you can say secured way to communicate one system to the another. And this HTTP request provide us the mechanism which basically this API is uses to connect from one system to another. This HTTP request only basically helping us to do that. And this HTTP request, whenever we are sending the request to the server, what it has in the request, basically it has a URL. The URL is nothing but it's a uniform resource locator. So in the HTTP request, what we have the API URL, right? We have the API URL plus we have some verb which we can say header, which we say header. So this header is nothing but it's basically telling the server whether this user who is basically trying to access the server, is it a valid user or not? It is basically telling in the section of header section by providing some, you can say, consent. How it is providing the consent? Maybe some token, right? Or maybe in a basically Instagram, what we do very first, we authenticate ourselves, right? How we authenticate? We basically provide the username and password, the basic authentication we do, right? Username and password. Agree with me? This part we do, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So basically, this header basically having this information only, that so that your server can identify this user is a valid user, right? So it having a in a basically the HTTP request having nothing but a URL, a API URL, and the verb which we say that as header. Plus it have some body as well. Body means what information it looking for. So whatever basically we are trying to search, okay, in a basically web page or in any application, it will go in a form of body section. Okay, so every basically API having a header, having a body, and it will basically call that. Let me show you that. Just a second. I'll show you that quickly. I'll basically run something for you. Cloud. I'll show you this UiPath. Basically, the application which we interact is nothing but it's basically behind the scene using orchestrator API only. UiPath orchestrator API only to show the data to us, right? When we are interacting with this, it is basically using behind the scene the orchestrator API to show the data. I'll show you basically how we it basically do that and what data it basically sent to the server. So let's go to the asset section and see that what API it's calling. So let me do one thing. I'll open a inspect. Basically, I'll open a network section over here and let me remove everything over here right now. Please notice one thing, that in the network section, we don't have anything right now. Let me go to the asset section and see that which API it's calling. So currently you can see that it has called a one API service. Basically, if you see over here, it has called orchestrator client. First of all, these are the so many call it has done, but mainly the API which has called, basically this is the API it has called, which is nothing but it trying to get the basically data in our asset section. It has called the UiPathCloud.com. This is our URL, which I told you, the default tenant and all those things, and it is calling OData asset API. And the method is basically telling that get method. I'll come to that part. No worries on that. What is this method right now? Just think of that. It basically the calling the API. This is the URL basically. And as I told you, like every request, it having a header section. So if I show you the payload right now, so you can see preview section. If I basically go over here in the header part over here, you can see it will come to the header section only. It has basically a URL and it has some extra part over here. But if I go over here, it has some content security policy as well, and some other part as well. Some basically we can say authorization token as well, as I was telling you, right? Means on the basis of token, the server basically analyze that whether this user is a valid user or not, right? So this header part, basically whenever we are calling a API, we are sending the request basically in a API URL, and we do have a header, and then we do have a body section as well. The body section sometimes empty, means there might be some method which don't require any body, like this get method. The get method don't require any body, means that you are saying to get something from the server. You are not giving something to the server. You wanted something back from the server. Whenever you are giving something to the server, like you wanted to post a event in Instagram. Maybe you wanted to create a one reel, basically, let's say, right? So if you wanted to create a reel in an Instagram, how you will do that? You will basically create your content and then hit a post button. Once you hit the post button, what it will does? It will basically keep all the data whatever you have provided and mark it inside the API call of the body section, and the server basically use that body section to write the data back in your section, basically profile section, right? So that is what basically it does. So whenever basically we are trying to interact any of the application, it basically having the interaction via the API call only, and the API having this request section where basically it will provide this URL, and in the URL we do have a header section as well, and in the header section we provide the authentication, what way basically the server identify which user it wanted to basically, which user, is it a valid user or is it having some issue, right? So now we understood that this part, but there is a server part also, right? So what it does when basically we call the API, so this part I'll remove from here. Let me just a second. Let me again choose my pen. Yeah. So let me just remove everything from here. We understood the request section, right? But let's talk about what will happen to the server side. This is from the local side, we understood how it will send. But what will happen to the server side, basically? So this is our local system. Again, we are trying to interact with google.com, right? Now we have already sent the request to the server, that we understood, right? Request we have sent. Every request, server will provide the response. Now the responsibility of the server, it will provide the response back to the local system. That is why it is basically able to interact each other, right? So in the response section, basically what it will provide, in the response section, it will provide the data. In the body part, it will provide the data, right? And it will also provide the status code. status code. Whether, so this status code, there are multiple status code of the each of the API. Basically, you can say, API having a status code as 200, 201, 401, 500. They have their own meaning. 200 means successful. Whenever we are getting a, as status code as 200 means that it is successful. 201 we will get whenever we are doing some another call. I'll coming on that part just a second. So 201 is a different code basically. So it will provide us a status code back to us, like whether it is success or failure. 401 means that bad request, means it's a failure, it's failed, right? Similarly, 500, it's an internal server error, means that there is something wrong with the server side, or the request which you are trying to access, it is not valid, right? So those are the status code. It will provide you back so that you will take action accordingly. But that is a API. Mainly you understood the API, how it basically does the thing for you. So if I go to the browser, you can see that at last, basically, if I go to the preview section, in the payload section, you can see what it has provided me. In the header part, basically, I have sent something, and at a return back, it has provided me the status code and some data back to me. And the data I can see in the response section. You can, if I go up, you can see that this is my data. So the data it has provided me in a JSON format, right? Whatever I would like to basically get from the database, it has already provided me back in a JSON format. So as I said that, as a return, I'll get status code as well as data in the form of body, right? Got it?
Yes, understood.
Okay. Now, as we understood this part, let me just remove this part again. Just a second. So let's talk about more on this. We understood this part. Let me write over here more thing, like as we now going to talk about this HTTP request. So this HTTP request, guys, having some method basically to do some processing in terms of our request. What type of request we wanted to send? Because request can be anything, right? You are sending a request to your teammate. Maybe you wanted to go out. So maybe that is asking some permission to your parents and all those things, right? So those kind of basically a request having a different methods, right? Again, over here, if I talk about the request method, so in programming also, we do have a request method. So we do have a get method to get something, okay, to get something, right? Then we do have a post method. Post means we want to write something back to database. Back to the server, right? That is a post call. Then we are saying get post delete. If I would like to delete something, that is another method basically I do have. And there is a patch method as well. Patch. People ask this difference. What is the difference between post and patch? And what is the difference between get and post? Can you tell me now get and post difference?
We want to get something from at a particular place, then we use that method. Means if we want to write something in between or update something, not update, but
Write something.
yeah, to write something, then we use post method.
Correct. But the difference, one more difference over here, that post require a data in a body section, right? You need to definitely provide a data to in a post call. Otherwise, like what you wanted to write, you need to provide, right? So that will go inside the post section. But when we saying the get request, we don't need to provide anything. Is that just that we need to basically say that we wanted to get something out of from the database, records, right? So that is a GET request basically. Got it? Means in the GET request, we won't send it anything. We will just say that we wanted to basically, let's suppose that currently we are basically, calling this OData API of the asset, UiPath OData API for asset, right? We are not sending anything. If you see that in the header section, we just send the request to read the data. But there are some cases, let me show you again. So if I basically click on the add asset over here, let's say mail to address I'll create. Maybe I'll give my name over here, right? Gopal Tiwari 222, just like that. Let me just reopen again. Now we are doing a post call. You will see that. If I remove everything over here and click on the create icon over here, you can see that currently I have hit a post call. Anyway, it got failed because the asset with the name is already being present. That is why it got failed. But you can see that we have sent it in a form of post. And in the payload, you can see that this is basically come in the request payload and it will go in the body section only. This is the data we wanted to send it there. Got it?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So that is a post call. So we do have a patch. Patch is nothing but we wanted to update something. Whenever basically, see, post is basically create newly, it will basically use for creating a new record. But patch is that for if we have already a record being present, we have already record present and we want to update that, right? And we want to update that, then we will go with the patch. Got it? The difference?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is a patch. So these are the method we do have. Now, as I said that we do have a status code as well, right? We do have a status code. So this status code we do have 200, we have 201, we have 400, we have 401, we have 500. There are many more, but I'm just telling you the which we are getting mainly basically. So 200 means successful. Whenever we are sending a request as get, we will always get as 200 as successful. Okay. Then 201 means that whenever we are doing a post call, basically, we wanted to create something. So it will give us the, instead of 200, it will give us 201. Means that it is success and it has created as well. That is the mean of this code. 400 means bad request. Something wrong with our request. Maybe the authorization is not correct. The request not having a, or the user doesn't have a proper permission to access the server, right? Then we do have a 401. 401 again a forbidden basically. It basically mainly come whenever we don't having a access. It's a access related. Okay. And then 500 means something basically wrong with our API call or URL itself. Something wrong with request URL. Got it? So means something basically bad request we are sending, like maybe URL is not correct or something like that. If that the situation, it will give you a 500 error. Okay.
Okay.
So far so good.
Yes.
Okay. Now basically we understood that we have what are the methods we have. So over here I have jotted down that only. If I go down a little bit. So let me just come to that part. So we having a get, post, put and patch also having a difference over here. Yeah. Put basically update data completely. So there is another method called put. Put is basically updating the entire data again. Let's suppose you having a data in the database. Let's think about this way. In a DB, let's suppose you having a data like this. So let me just remove everything here now. Put and patch, basically the people ask this question as well. What is the difference between put and patch? So let me write a update query here, first of all, for your understanding. Okay. I'm writing a, let's think about, you have an employee database. Okay. Employee database you do have. So I'm going to write a update query over here. Update employee, right? Update employee. I would like to set address. I would like to change the address. Okay. Set address. I would like to say XYZ maybe, right? Where employee ID equal to 10. Whenever we are performing this query, right? Whenever we are performing this query, if we having a put request, if we have called the put request, so what it does, it will perform this query in such a way that we wanted to update only the address, right? If you see that what we are updating currently, only the address part of the employee 10, right? Wherever the employee ID is 10, we wanted to update the address of that employee, right? But what put does, it will also override the employee name, whatever column, other column are being present, it will override back again. Means it will update all the column. Got it? Okay. But when we are calling a patch, basically, it will only update the specific column, not all. That is the only difference over here. Means it will not override the data, it will just update the particular column, that's it. But the thing is that when we are doing a put, means that either we wanted to basically only wanted to perform the update on an address column, but still it will basically updating the data in a entire column, basically whatever the columns we have present over there for the employee ID 10. Got it?
Yes, got it.
Okay. Now, let me go down again. So we have understood the put, patch, delete, we have already talked. We having a basically a one more thing over here, types of API. So we having a, in a general term, you can say we having a REST, we having a SOAP-based API, and we having a GraphQL API. So REST nowadays basically very much being used. It's a representation of, you can say, it's basically commonly used, and it's a kind of a more secure way to connect. Because previously, whenever we are doing a API automation, we do in a SOAP-based automation. Means simple operation access protocol it is basically, or you can say, it basically mainly for the XML based data. It doesn't allow you to get the data in a form of JSON, in a form of text. No, it will only support the XML based the result. But whenever we are saying the REST API is basically more advanced API which support n number of, you can say, request and response outcome, and it will basically utilize this get, put, post, delete method. Means it won't basically show at a URL level, it won't basically present that what request we are calling. But in a SOAP API, the URL is so that if we wanted to call the, let's suppose in a server, if we wanted to call the, if we have written an API in the server, say that like we having a API saying getting employee records. Okay. Whenever we are calling a REST API, we will call the method as get. We will not specify what API we are calling at the behind. This means it will not open the API URL. But whenever we are calling this SOAP API, it will basically present that, oh, we are calling there is a method being written. Behind the scene, there is a method being written called get employee address or get employee ID, which is basically being called in a API. So it will present the URL as a method as well, which is less secure. That is why basically people has overcome and come with the another solution, call it as REST API. REST is more advanced and being used a lot. And the GraphQL API is the modern API nowadays being used as well. And it is mainly basically you will find these API whenever you are doing a Microsoft services automation, let's suppose you wanted to call a Teams API. Microsoft Teams having its own API. So if you wanted to get some data from the, you can say any of the user chat, right? So if you wanted to get it, or users files basically, or a SharePoint API if you wanted to automate, you will go with this GraphQL API only. So this GraphQL basically provided by the Microsoft side, and it is a more advanced, one step advanced from this REST API. REST API is less advanced than this GraphQL API. So there are different methods, just that only you need to understand that what are the basically mean of this get, put, post when you will going to call. Let's suppose you wanted to get something, you will call a get API of that particular request, right? And if you wanted to write something, you will call a post request. Whenever you wanted to update something, either you will go with the put or you will go with the patch. It depends as per your requirement. You can see that it will partially update, or it will update user info, entire user info it will update. And if you wanted to delete something, you will use the delete API. Got it? Any confusion, any concern here?
Yeah, understood.
Okay.
Different
Now,
categories, understood.
yeah, I understood that basically. I would say, try to see the UiPath documentation there. I will basically definitely suggest you that don't go with the any other API automation. Try with this orchestrator API itself, because that will help you to. People ask this question as well: how you automate the orchestrator API? That you should aware of. So if you understand that or API automation, you will basically do that orchestrator API automation as well. Okay. So let's go with the demo section now. What basically we're gonna do? We basically going to call one of the API. Basically, I have already configured my account there. So we're going to call this, you can say, calling the weather API. Okay. This weather API, what it will does, it will give us the return back what is the weather of the today's weather of the particular city. We'll provide the city name in a query, and it will give us the return back in a get API query. Basically, we'll provide it in a query, basically a city, and it will give us the back result as a what is the today's weather there in that particular city. So we'll see that how we'll do that. So very first in
Also, can
UiPath,
you please share the documentation in the group? UiPath
which documentation?
Yeah, the documentation for API.
This one?
Not this one. The UiPath documentation for APIs.
UiPath, basically what you can do, you just need to over here, UiPath orchestrator API documentation, you can just search it. People ask this question, definitely, and I'll suggest you go with this only. Don't go with any other way. Go with this orchestrator API automation only. Try to first basically see the example, how I'm calling the other API. This will remain same. No other way. Just that the authentication mechanism is going to be changed there. How basically we are calling earlier, like we were calling you can say by passing a bearer token or username and password. Nowadays, they have basically changed that mechanism, and they have provided another way called basically creating a external API in the orchestrator, which will provide us the client ID, client secret, and that client ID and client secret we can pass whenever we are calling any of the API, basically, so that orchestrator server can identify this user is a valid user, basically, right? So over here you can see that the API section we do have, and everything is being present over here. You don't need to worry. You just need to follow that. Go with the very first step, authentication part. Don't go directly with any of the requests. First, see how you will authenticate, because once you authenticate, you will basically able to get all the API. First step in all the API, basically, if the API follow the authentication, you need to first of all authenticate that. So to authentication method, you just need to find out what are the authentication method UiPath has provided. How you will do that? They have basically provided those things over here. Just basically go with this external application authentication method, as I told you. So you just need to create a external API over there, and then basically it will provide you the credentials like client ID, client secret, and all those things which you can utilize in your code for orchestrator API's authentication. Got it? Yeah, can I move ahead?
Yes, sir, I was on mute.
Okay. So let's basically very first let's understood that in UiPath how we'll do the API automation. To do the API automation, we have to very first install a package called UiPath.web.api.activities package. Very first, the requirement is that you should have installed this package, UiPath.web.api.activities package. Okay. Once you install this package, you will basically able to access the activities which are helping you to interact or calling the API in UiPath to any of the API basically. I'm not talking only orchestrator API. You can call any API basically by using this HTTP request method activity basically. Okay. So when I go to the web section over here, if you search over here web, so you can see that it will provide you all the methods like HTTP request method activity over here. If you drag this activity, it will basically give you a mechanism over here to configure a wizard where basically you wanted to call the API. So if I click on the configure section, you can see that it is asking me the endpoint, the preview URL. Basically, it will generate by itself. Then I told you like what method basically it is nothing but that only. Then you do basically having a if your API requires some parameter. So API might sometime require a parameter like if you wanted to get a record of a particular user. Let's suppose I would like to get a record of Ratna from the system. Like how can I get that? So I'll provide your ID in a parameter section in a API like get user ID equal to something, right? So it will give me the particular user information, not all the user information, get the particular user information. That will call it as parameterized basically API calling. So means filtering out the data. Then in a authentication section, if you're having some authentication mechanism, you can basically provide that. And here basically you can provide a header section as well. Like if you wanted to send some authorization token and all those things to authenticate the user, always provide in the header section of the API. Got it? So let's call the API. I have basically having one of the API. I have already set up my account there. You can basically do that in a weather API, but I'll suggest you go with that first approach itself, like calling a orchestrator API only. Just understood this way, like how it call it, right? So this is our base URL of the weather API. So I'll configure it here, right? And then basically what I'm going to do, I'm calling a weather API to get the weather of the particular, you can say city. So currently this has provided me one, you can say, where you can say method or a API URL, which is says that current.json. Means this current.json, what this API URL does, it will provide, I need to provide a city name to this API, and it will return me the data that what is the current weather of that particular city, right? So let me just provide over here after the base URL, I'll provide the API URL basically, which I would like to call over here. It's nothing but current.json. Okay. And once we are done, we'll basically come to this header section over here because we need to provide a authorization part as well. So you can see that we have provided a in a header section. If I basically go over here, you can see we have provided a one call, or I'll show you from here itself. Like we have provided a one basically API key in a header section, right? So this API key we need to provide, this key we need to provide there. So let's provide this key, and this key I have already noted down. When at the time of creating the account, I have basically created it. Okay. So you just need to basically pass this. Yeah. Now let's preview everything. Like we would like to get the data. So currently we are getting API key is invalid or not provided. Okay. So let me just go back to my request builder. Let me see. API key is invalid. Oh, name is the key basically it's saying. Okay, let's see. Parameter Q is missing. Yeah, now we need to provide our parameter basically, right? So let's provide our another parameter over here. Let me add a parameter over here, Q, and in the Q we'll provide a Delhi, basically, we wanted to get a weather from the Delhi city, right? So let's see, let's preview this. You can see that it has basically it treated in a different way. Country it has took as a Canada, which is not correct basically. Exactly, it's not correct. It's something, it's basically trying to get the particular country. It's not understanding like which country this Delhi is, right? Maybe we can change this with Canada itself. And let's see. Yeah, so it basically gets some record for us. Even Delhi, for it, Delhi, it has get the record, but it's not correct. So currently, if I go over here, you can see that everything comes up in a JSON format. So whatever basically I'm getting as a response, basically it's come in a JSON format. This data is this basically the representation of the data. We call it as JSON representation. Okay, and here basically, if I go down, so you can see that I got everything like what is the wind mile basically, right? And what is the temperature in a Celsius, what is in a Fahrenheit basically right now. 5 degrees Celsius is going on saying that, and Fahrenheit is 41.7. And which city is was telling, it was telling Ontario basically, it was telling right now. But it may differ, we can change that as well, but that the different talk. So right now we can basically utilize this and see that how it works, right? So if I go to the properties section, you can see that we have configured everything. Like you can go both the way, like either you can configure here or you can configure from the properties section, like request URL you can provide here. In the, you have a header section over here, you can open the header section and you have everything over here, right? And you have a parameter section over here. You can basically see that you have provided a parameter as well. So all of the things you can basically change it. And you can change the method, like what method you wanted to call it. Is it a get, put, post, delete, what type of method it is, right? That is basically a request we have sent. Now we will get the response. So we need to hold the output for us, right? Again, it will provide the two things, as I said, that one is the status code. So let's hold the status code for us, status code of weather API, and the response, right? So response content also we will store it. Yeah. So let me just show you first of all the status code itself, how it looks like. Then we'll see how basically we will read the JSON. Okay. So this is the way basically, if we run this, you can see that we got a 200, means that it's successful, right? So now what we can do, we can basically, because if you see over here, if I show you in a message box, basically again, the response content, right? If you see the response content, you will find that it's not that much readable, right? So to make it readable, it's in a JSON format and it will look very clumsy. Means it's not that much readable. Currently, it is a so long information, it's not coming into the message box. Let's put in a log message maybe. Log message maybe you can put over here. See, it got the data, but you can see that the data is very much clumsy and it's not that much readable format. If you wanted to read the data, what is the basically currently there, Ontario having a temperature right now in a Celsius or Fahrenheit, we won't be able to find that directly. So to convert the JSON or the plain text in the JSON readable format, we need to deserialize the JSON. Okay, so there is an activity called deserialize JSON. This is the basically activity we're going to utilize. What it does, it will take the argument as response content, right? Means as a string form, it will take the JSON and it will give us a JSON object so that we can basically utilize that as a dictionary kind of way. Okay, got it?
Yeah.
JSON,
So we
JSON,
are creating an output variable for JSON object, and
correct, correct. So what it does basically, it will, because currently we are getting as a textual format, but again textual in a JSON, right? Let me
yeah, it's
write.
not in readable format. We can't
Correct,
understand it as we see.
correct. What is there basically, it will hard to understand, right? So let me write this data as well for your basically test purpose, test or whether API response .txt. If I write this data, you will see that. So currently, if I open it, let's suppose we do have our data API response, but you can see that how it looks like. Anyhow, basically, we are human. We are able to read it out like what is there, but it's in a JSON format, and we couldn't able to read it properly. There are ways like always try to go with the browser, search with JSON beautifier, okay, and search is over here so that you can basically beautify the JSON and can read it properly what it looks like basically. So you can see that it will now show this basically. So we can read each and every over here. It's nothing but the key value pair, right? Everything over here coming as a JSON object and everything looks like as a key value pair,
Yeah, key value
right?
pair.
Got it?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So if you basically now would like to get the record from the, you can say, particular data, if you wanted to read the JSON data, let's suppose we wanted to put a message box here. How we will read the data now from the JSON object? So we're going to use this JSON object, okay? Then we wanted to read the city name, the name, okay? And we wanted to read the current, basically we wanted to read the temperature as well. So how we'll read that? We need to utilize the JSON token as well. So over here we having a called JSON object dot token. Basically we do having a, just a second, I'm reading a word. Just a second. Yeah, come back. So what we will do, we wanted to read the data from name, right? And the name is present inside which object? Location object. If you see that it is present inside the location object. So we need to first of all read this location. So let's read the location. We'll provide this key over here, location. Then we are saying we would like to read inside the location. There is another key called name. We would like to read that, right? So this is the way basically we can easily read the data from the JSON, right? Plus, let me just break it down the line so that we can show the current temperature as well. Now, I'll open it in a new line so that you can see that. Now I would like to read the temperature Celsius as well. So what I need to do, I need to read this current object and then inside this temperature, right? So then I'll read first of all this current. So here again I'll provide the JSON object. I need to provide the key very first current and then inside I would like to read the temperature, right? So this value I'll provide it here. Then I'll say dot to string. That's it. So see, we got the same result, right? We having a location as Ottawa and basically currently the temperature is 5.4, right? Got it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Got it.
So this is the way basically to read the data from the JSON. Always remember that you need a deserialize JSON activity to basically convert the plain JSON object, or you can say plain textual format of the JSON string into the JSON object. Then only you can basically loop it through the JSON as well. You can loop through the JSON. Basically, you having a for loop over here. If you see that, if you search over here for, so you can see that for each folder, for each browse file, uh, there is some I have saw earlier, like we do have a one for loop as well, which basically loop through the JSON node basically. So each basically these we are call it as token. Okay, either token, JSON token or node. Okay, got it?
So like if you want to, because here we have given the hard coding thing, or else we have to use for loop to get
Correct.
inside uh, to get a particular value.
Correct, correct. Either you can do one thing like one thing also we can do, like if we having a single object, na, like currently it's a nested object. If you can see that in, so this is in the JSON basically, whenever this curly braces is come, okay. So this curly braces represent the JSON object, and whenever this type of array bracket, like this type of bracket is come, it will represent the JSON array. Remember this. This is a representation of the JSON. So whenever we having a this kind of representation, this means that it's a JSON object, the first one. And the second one,
Okay.
basically, whenever it is come like this, it is a JSON array. So when you can see over here inside the UiPath, if I basically go again and show to you. So if I go to the network tab and refresh this part, let me show you again. Yeah, so it has called the API. Let me see where it has called the, or let's say we wanted to call the queue API now. I'll just remove everything and get a queue, right? So now if I go to the response section, you can see, you will see that the data is coming in a which form? In an array form. It's in a JSON array form. This is a one object. This part is one object basically. This is a one JSON object. One JSON object. Okay. This is one JSON object. This is another JSON object after this, but it is surrounded with what? It's an array. It's a
Array,
JSON
array.
array. Got it?
Yes, got it.
Yeah. So this is the way basically we call the API in UiPath, and you can play around with. There are basically, get, put, post, delete, all the API being present over here. Like if you wanted to, currently we can't perform the post API with this URL, but you can basically try with the orchestrator API by basically creating a authentication mechanism very fast to the orchestrator and try to create the asset or a queue via the API, because you know that by running the or process from the orchestrator, you know that you need to go to the job section or you need to trigger it. That is a different way. But how you basically trigger a API process via the API call, you need to basically do that. So you need to call a process API, run job API or something API being present in the UiPath. You just need to call that API, which will launch the particular process for you. Got it? Try with that. I'll suggest you that it will take time, but the basic understanding, if your foundation is clear, you can break it. Got it? So this is what basically in the API, like the same way basically we can call the post API. The only difference is that in the post, we need to send the data. And to send the data, we need to basically send in a form of JSON format, or it depends like what format your API is being requesting, but mainly it requires in a JSON format. Like you can see that over here, if we go to the orchestrator again, and if we basically, go to the queue section and click on the add queue, let's suppose maybe we can say test. And if I basically again inspect it, so you can see if I go to the network section again, so let me remove everything here. And if I click on the add, you will see that it has called the API over here, but it has sent the data in a JSON format. So it has sent this data. So you can see that this basically it has sent. Let me copy this data for you. So see, it has sent this name test we have given over there. Description is this, like all this property. Basically, it has called the API. The API it has called. It is nothing but this is the API it has called. Let me go a little bit here. And you can see that it has called the OData queue definition API and call a queue definition as post call, so that it will create a queue, and with this queue it need to create the name as test. And these are the property it has basically provided in a JSON, the name, the output, all those things, right? And those are not mandatory property, only you need to provide the name. Maybe you need to provide the retry action is being required or not, or the unique reference is being enabled or not. All those things you need to provide, but you don't need to provide all of the things. That's it. Basically, it will call the API. Got it?
Yeah, understood.
Or any confusion here?
So like here in the orchestrator, we have created by using an add queue. Otherwise, if we want to just post something,
Correct. But the main mechanism,
then
basically, what I
yeah,
would like to tell you, like what it does. This is just a UI, right? This is a button, add button. It is no longer representing the behind the scene what is going on. This button, on this click of this button, there is a API post request is being calling to the orchestrator server, which basically, requires a request. Means we have created a request, like we have basically given a name, we have provide the, like we have provided name of the queue, we have provided like auto retry is required, and all those property we have enabled. And once we click on the add button, this add button click, it will basically call a API to the server as a post API basically, and it will write the data in the server. That means it will create the data for us or a queue for us. Got it?
yeah, it will create. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the mechanism is using the add queue, and then we give the details. The mechanism which is used is post.
Correct. Correct. Means behind the
Yeah,
scene, it is calling a
behind the scene.
correct. Behind the scene is basically calling a OData definition API, basically, which is method as post call. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if I go again, don't confuse on this. So if I go to the UiPath orchestrator API documentation. So if you go here, go to the queue section. See, you do have a queue item request, right? Very first, you wanted to read the data from the queue. So if you wanted to read the data from the queue, what API you will call? You will call a get API, or of basically what? You will call a get queue item, right? Or data queue items means to get something, right? Then if you wanted to write something, then that time call another API. Basically, there is a API. Like over here, they are calling a particular queue ID, like queue items, get a queue item of this ID, right? That is a different call. Then if I go down,
बहुत दिलचस्प है भाई, मजा तो आता है। कैसे आ रहे हो? बहुत बुरा नशा है। बहुत बुरा नशा है।
who's that? Please go on mute.
सब ना बंदे हार जीत नहीं देखते, फिर तो इंटरेस्ट लेते हैं। इंटरेस्ट अब चल रहा है।
Just please go on mute. Okay, so you can see that over here, we having a retention and all those things. You having a over here a queue creation API as well. You just need to find that. Currently, they are using a queue items only, but for creation also they are using that only. Just need to check. Just a second, huh? Oh, data queue items. This is for get. Then data queue item for getting the particular ID. Basically, that is again we have already talked, right? But there is another, yeah, see, queue definition to add any filter or necessary. See, to call a post API, basically, you can see that initiating an export by calling a post, basically, you need to call a API this. And in this, basically, you need to provide a URL as at last, basically, this is your base URL. This will not going to change. This will remain same, right? Your http.cloud.uipath.com, then
Yeah, that is the base
organization.
URL.
Then after basically what service you are using, maybe the queue service you are using, maybe you are using a job, maybe you are using a asset. Those are the different service, right? So those service basically you can specify over here. Like currently they have specified the OData. Our OData is also going to be same. After that you will specify the your service name. So currently we are using a queue definition. The queue definition means we will write something in the queue, means we wanted to create the queue. So we'll go with this queue definition method. And this queue definition, we will call it as post API. So you can see that over here, they
And
have
here we are not using the UI, and by using this query, we are creating
correct. See, that is why the API, right? UI is no longer being there in the API call.
Yeah.
UI is basically a user interaction. We are not calling via the user interaction. We are basically calling it. You can see that the weather API I have just called, I haven't utilized any UI. I just call the behind the scene the weather API, which is being launched somewhere. I don't know where it is being launched or where it is being hosted. I just calling that server. I'm just requesting to the server to provide me the data, right? Got it?
Yes, got it.
Yes. All right, then I think this is from my side. Like, but I would suggest you go with the orchestrator API itself, because that will more help you. And it will basically more sense, right, to moving ahead. Like people ask this question to the interview as well, whether you have done the automation to the RPA automation to the orchestrator API or not. If even you haven't done, you can say that if you have utilized those, you can say that yeah, I know that how it can be called, and I know that how API being utilized in UiPath. So you can basically give the example to them, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right then. I think I'm good.